Hello everyone, welcome and welcome back to my YouTube channel. This side Preeti and I'm a portrait artist. So I'm making a video after a long time, and this video is also regarding an art material. So the art material that we will be discussing today's video will be charcoal powder. So a lot of you are very much curious about what brand of charcoal powder I use or how I make it. So everything will be discussed in today's video, and I hope it turns out to be very helpful to you. Now in this video, I'll be talking about the charcoal powder and how you can make your own charcoal powder. Now personally for me, I prefer using my own charcoal powder which I make by myself with the help of a compressed stick and a sandpaper. So I will teach you that. Now you can again go for other charcoal powders as well from different brands that offer charcoal powder. But for me, I will tell you what I use. So for that we need few tools. So the first tool that we need is a sandpaper. The next one is compressed charcoal stick. So I'll put a picture here of the complete charcoal stick, how it looks like. This is a compressed charcoal stick from Camlin, and this is what I use to make my charcoal powder. So this is how it is. So these are two things which we will be needing, and another thing that we need is a paper. Now these are the three things that we'll be needing, and a fourth thing which will be a container for you to store your charcoal powder. So it's very simple. So what we need to do is that we need to take this sandpaper and this stick, and we have to just simply rub it against this like this. And our charcoal powder is ready. So this is it. There's no master you need to do to make a charcoal powder. That's all. This is all you need to do to make a charcoal powder, and our charcoal powder is ready. So the mistake I was talking about is that what people do is that they just take this compressed charcoal stick and they just break it into small pieces to make that powder. But what happens is that when you will do that, you will get that uneven effect and the patches on the paper, because the grains of the powder are going to be uneven, which will give you uneven values on the paper, and that will result in patches. So this is one thing that you need to avoid. So how we can use this charcoal powder? We need brushes, which is these makeup brushes you can use to lift off this charcoal powder and apply on your paper. So we just need to take few powder. Either you can directly press it here, or you can take it like this. And yes, your charcoal powder is ready. Now you can create different tones with the help of this powder by how lightly you rub it on the paper, or how force you apply while applying it on the paper. That will determine your values, whether it will be light or dark, like this. Now another thing which you need to keep in mind while using a charcoal powder is you need to have a container for this. For example, I have this container. I just randomly picked this, but it turned out to be very useful because of the surface of this lid. So this is how I store my charcoal powder. As you can see. So I do not directly apply or do it like this. I do not directly rub it on the paper and then apply it. What I do is I store the charcoal powder like this, and when I have to use it, I'll just take one and dab it on this lid like this. And this is how I'll pick my charcoal powder. You do not have to directly do this. You do not have to directly apply the charcoal powder on the paper. Just pick it up and start rubbing it on the paper. You have to avoid doing this, because again it will result in the patches, because the amount of charcoal powder you have lift off of the lid with the help of this brush is going to be uneven, which will again result in those patches. So you need to first have it and rub it like this, and then you will get that light tone or even shade. So this is the correct way to use a charcoal powder. Now another thing that you can do is that if you do not have a lid like this, a surface like this, so what you do is that you take the charcoal powder and you use a different paper other than the paper you are working on. So you dab it like this and then apply it on the paper with very light hand. So this is another thing that you can do if you do not want to use a lid, or you do not have a lid for some reason. So this is another way to use it. So the underline is that you do not have to apply the charcoal powder directly onto the paper. You always have to use some tissue paper or another paper or a lid where you can shake off that extra powder, and then you can apply it. Now another point which you must keep in mind, that while you are using a charcoal powder, your hand needs to be very light. You cannot apply too much pressure on the brush, because it will create the patches which we are trying to avoid. So all these things are going to turn patches onto your paper, which we definitely do not want on our paper. So this is what you have to do. You have to use a very light hand. No matter what the size of the brush is, you just have to use a very light hand while applying the charcoal powder. So yeah, this was the charcoal powder that you can make on your own. Now I have another charcoal powder for you to give example of. This is a Brewster charcoal powder. Now comparatively, this is very dark charcoal powder, so you have to again use it with more care. So you do the same thing. You do not want extra charcoal powder, especially in this case when the grade is so high. You do not want extra charcoal powder on your brush, so you use very light hand. And now you can see how our grades are again more higher than this. So you can see this is what we got applying the same amount of pressure on the brush, and this is what we got applying the same amount on pressure, but the difference in charcoal powder created this much difference. So this is how different charcoal powder works. This is what you have made on your own, and you definitely have a lower grade than this, and this is what you can get from outside. Now I do not prefer beginners to use this because charcoal powder in itself is very hard. You might think it's not that hard while watching me, but you will understand when you will use the powder of your own, because it's a powder. It's again very hard to control and to give direction to. So I do not recommend this powder to the beginners, but I definitely highly recommend this to the people who are looking for different grade of charcoal powder. It's an excellent charcoal powder which you can use to create higher grades, because in charcoal powder there's a limit to the values you can achieve with the same grade of charcoal stick. So that's why you need some changes, you need some upgrades. So for that upgrade, you can definitely go for this charcoal powder from Brewster. So yeah, this was all for charcoal powder. Now to give you another example, I've also created a charcoal powder with the help of these general stick with 2B and 4B. So this is the charcoal powder that I've created from 6B and 2B. Now I'll also, so if I use it like this, take small bit of powder, dab it onto the lid, and this is how we lift it off. This is I guess 6B, this is 2B. No matter what charcoal powder it is, you have to keep in mind the basics, which is to use your brush very lightly. So now you can see it's the 2B one. Now I'll also, to show you the difference, I'll also use the 6B one. I do not use these charcoals much because I have enough experience with this powder to create different tones only using one powder. So this is 6B. So here you can see not much of a difference. That's exactly what I felt with these powders, that there's no much of a difference. The only difference that the difference is there, but there's not that much vast of a difference, because of which you have to make different charcoal powders of different grade. So you can use just one charcoal powder and you can create different values with the help of that only. So I hope you get your own experience. You try to use it, try to play with it, try to experiment around with this powder, so you can understand and you can get more familiar with the medium.